The blood-red sun dipped below the jagged horizon as dust swirled across the hardened earth of Dry Creek, Arizona Territory, 1885, where Delilah Goodwin stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a carpetbag, determination, and a telegram from her late father's business partner. The dry heat enveloped her immediately, a stark difference from the cool Philadelphia spring she'd left behind, but Delilah straightened her back and lifted her chin, refusing to show weakness in this unfamiliar frontier town. "Miss Goodwin?" A weathered man in a tailored suit approached her, his gray mustache neatly trimmed. "Walter Jenkins. I sent the telegram about your father's property. My deepest condolences." Delilah nodded, swallowing the familiar lump in her throat. "Thank you for writing, Mr. Jenkins. I'm eager to see what remains of my father's holdings. Of course. I've arranged a room for you at the boarding house. We can discuss the ranch tomorrow after you've rested." As they walked down the dusty main street, Delilah noticed the curious glances from townspeople. A young woman traveling alone was unusual enough, but one dressed in fine Eastern clothes stood out like a wildflower in winter. "Your father's ranch is 15 miles outside town," Jenkins explained. "He'd made quite a go of it before the drought. Then the cattle disease hit last season." "And the debts?" Delilah asked directly. Jenkins sighed. "Substantial. The bank's given until the end of summer before foreclosure." Delilah nodded, having expected as much. Her father had left Philadelphia 3 years ago to seek his fortune in the West. His letters had been full of promise and possibility. Now all that remained were debts and a failing ranch. "I'll need to hire someone knowledgeable about ranching," she said. Jenkins hesitated. "Finding good help won't be easy. Not many men willing to work for a woman, especially one from back east." "I'll manage," Delilah replied firmly. "I didn't come all this way to surrender my father's dream without a fight." The next morning, Delilah donned her simplest dress and accompanied Jenkins to the saloon where ranch hands and cowboys often gathered seeking work. The dimly lit establishment fell silent as she entered, all eyes turning to assess the newcomer. "Gentlemen," Jenkins announced, "this is Miss Goodwin, the new owner of the Circle G. She's looking to hire experienced hands." A few men chuckled, others simply turned back to their drinks. One man in the corner, tall with broad shoulders and a face partially obscured by the shadow of his hat, continued watching her with intense blue eyes. "I'm offering fair wages," Delilah said clearly. "The ranch needs experienced men who know cattle and aren't afraid of hard work." "No offense, madam," a grizzled older man said, "but that spread's been cursed since last summer. Ain't worth the effort." "I disagree," she replied coolly. "With the right people, it can thrive again." As she turned to leave, the tall man from the corner approached. His face was tanned from the sun, with several days' worth of stubble darkening his jaw. His clothes were worn but clean, and he moved with the easy grace of someone comfortable in his own skin. "Madam," he said, his voice low and rough. "Might have a word?" Jenkins gave her a warning look, but Delilah nodded. They stepped outside onto the boardwalk. "Roy Irving," he introduced himself with a slight tip of his hat. "I rode for your father last spring before the trouble started." "You know the ranch, then?" "Every acre. Good land, just needs the right handling." Hope flared in Delilah's chest. "Would you consider coming back? I need someone who can help restore it." Roy studied her face, his expression unreadable. "It's a fool's errand, Miss Goodwin. That drought killed half the stock, and what's left ain't worth much. I have funds to purchase new cattle," she countered. "What I lack is knowledge. And you think I'm the one to provide it?" There was something guarded in his eyes. "Mr. Jenkins says you were my father's best hand?" Roy shook his head. "I'm just passing through. Not looking for permanent work." "I'm not asking for permanent," Delilah insisted. "Just long enough to get the ranch running again or to determine if it's truly beyond saving." He considered her for a long moment. "Why's it matter to you? You could sell what's left, go back east." "Because it was my father's dream," she said simply. And now it's mine. Something shifted in Roy's expression. I'll disappoint you, he said finally. Always do. Delilah met his gaze steadily. Then I'll be proud to be proven wrong. For a moment, surprise flickered across his face. Then his mouth curved into the slightest smile. All right, Miss Goodwin. I'll give you 3 months. Not a day more. 3 months, she agreed, extending her hand. Roy hesitated before taking it, his callous palm rough against her smooth skin. We leave at first light tomorrow. The journey to the Circle G the next morning revealed a landscape both harsh and beautiful. Delilah, dressed in the riding clothes she'd hastily purchased, followed Roy's lead as they traversed the rugged terrain. The mountains rose in the distance, majestic against the clear blue sky, while cacti and scrub brush dotted the sandy soil beneath their horses' hooves. Your father chose good land, Roy commented as they crested a hill. Natural spring feeds the creek year-round, even during drought. Good shelter from the north winds in winter. Below them stretched the Circle G, a modest ranch house with a barn, corral, and bunkhouse nestled in a small valley. It's smaller than I expected, Delilah admitted. Your father was building something genuine, Roy replied. Not just playing at being a rancher like some Easterners who come west. They approached the main house, and Delilah felt a sharp pang seeing her father's handwork in the porch railing, the flower boxes now empty and weathered. A Mexican woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Senor Irving! You have returned! She exclaimed, then noticed Delilah. And you must be Senor Goodwin's daughter. I am Elena Vasquez. I kept the house for your father. Thank you for staying on, Mrs. Vasquez, Delilah said warmly. I promise your father, Elena said simply. Come inside. I have prepared rooms for you both. The house was simple but sturdy, with furniture her father had either built or purchased locally. Delilah ran her fingers over the oak dining table, imagining him sitting there, writing his optimistic letters. Your father was a good man, Roy said quietly, observing her. Treated his hands fair. Paid on time. Yet they all left when things got difficult, she noted. Men have to eat, Roy replied. When the cattle started dying, there wasn't money for wages. That evening, after a simple dinner prepared by Elena, Roy and Delilah sat on the porch as twilight deepened into night. The vastness of the open sky, scattered with more stars than Delilah had ever seen, took her breath away. Tomorrow we'll ride the boundaries, Roy said, his profile illuminated by the lantern light. Need to check fences, see what's salvageable. How bad is it really? Delilah asked. Roy was silent for a moment. Bad enough. Maybe 50 had left from what was 300. Water's good, but pastures poor after the drought. Buildings need work. And you've got neighbors eyeing your land. Neighbors? Emmett Hargrove. Owns the Big H to the north. Been trying to buy out smaller spreads for years. Your father refused to sell. As will I, Delilah said firmly. Roy glanced at her. Hargrove doesn't take kindly to refusal. Especially from a woman. Then he'll have to learn new habits, she replied. Roy's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. You're nothing like I expected, Miss Goodwin. And what did you expect? Someone soft. Someone who'd take one look at this place and run back east. Delilah gazed out at the darkened landscape. I may be from the east, Mr. Irving, but I'm not soft. My father raised me alone after my mother died. He taught me that anything worth having requires hard work and sacrifice. Your father said similar things? Roy commented. Never thought I'd meet someone more stubborn than him. Perhaps that's our family legacy, she said with a small smile. Stubborn determination in the face of impossible odds. The following days established a routine. Each morning, they rode out to inspect different parts of the ranch. Roy taught Delilah about cattle, water management, and the particulars of ranching in the arid territory. Despite her inexperience, she proved a quick study, asking intelligent questions and working without complaint. A week into her stay, they rode to the northern boundary where several fence posts had been deliberately knocked down. "Hargrove's men," Roy said, examining the damage. "Warning shot. We'll rebuild it," Delilah said, dismounting to gather the scattered wire. As they worked side by side repairing the fence, Delilah stole glances at Roy. Despite his initial reluctance, he'd been patient and thorough in sharing his knowledge. There was something compelling about the way he moved, economical and precise, never wasting energy. "You mentioned you're just passing through," she said, holding the wire taut while he secured it. "Where are you headed?" Roy paused briefly. "Nowhere particular. Been that way most of my life." "No family waiting somewhere?" "None that would claim me." His tone discouraged further questions. That evening, Elena served a hearty stew and fresh bread. As they ate, Delilah noticed Roy studying a letter she'd left on the sideboard. "From the bank?" he asked. She nodded. "They've agreed to extend the loan if I can make a partial payment by the end of the month." "How much?" $500. Roy whistled low. "That's a tall order." "I have some savings," Delilah said. "And I'm planning to ride into town tomorrow to inquire about selling a few pieces of jewelry." "I'll go with you," Roy said immediately. "Town's not always safe for a woman alone." Their trip to Dry Creek proved eventful. After Delilah's business at the assayer's office was complete, they encountered three rough-looking men outside the general store. "Well, look here," one called out. "It's Irving, playing nursemaid to the Eastern lady." Roy's expression remained impassive. "Miss Goodwin, these are some of Hargrove's men. Wyatt, Dutton, and Miller." "Madam." Wyatt, the apparent leader, tipped his hat with mock courtesy. "Heard you're trying to save that worthless spread. Hargrove's offering fair price, even with all the troubles." "Please inform Mr. Hargrove that the Circle G is not for sale," Delilah replied coolly. "Might want to reconsider," Miller said. "Ranching's dangerous work. All sorts of accidents can happen." Roy stepped forward, his hand hovering near his holstered revolver. "That sounds mighty close to a threat, Miller." The tension crackled between them until Wyatt laughed, breaking the moment. "Just friendly advice. Come on, boys." As they walked away, Delilah released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Are they always so charming?" "Hargrove's getting impatient," Roy said, his eyes still tracking the men. "He's been buying up water rights all through the territory. Your father's spring is one of the few he doesn't control. All the more reason not to sell," Delilah stated. On the ride back to the ranch, they passed a section of land where a small herd of cattle grazed. Roy pointed out the Circle G brand visible on their flanks. "These strays survived the winter on their own," he explained. "Good stock. With proper care, they could form the foundation of a new herd." Hope flickered in Delilah's chest. "Could we round them up tomorrow?" "We can try," Roy agreed, a rare smile warming his features. "But we'll need help." The next day, Roy rode to a nearby Apache settlement where he developed a friendship with several men during his previous time at the ranch. He returned with two skilled riders, Joseph and Thomas, who agreed to help with the roundup in exchange for supplies and ammunition. The work was grueling, but by sundown, they had gathered nearly 30 head of cattle. As they drove the animals into the corral, Delilah felt a surge of accomplishment watching the animals mill about in the enclosure. "Good work today," Roy said, coming to stand beside her. "Your father would be proud." The simple words touched her deeply. "Thank you for making this possible." Roy shrugged, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Just doing the job I signed on for." "Is that all it is?" Delilah asked softly. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Before Roy could respond, Joseph called out that one of the calves had injured its leg during the roundup. The moment broken, Roy moved away to tend to the animal, leaving Delilah with the lingering awareness that her feelings for this enigmatic cowboy were growing into something far beyond professional appreciation. As weeks passed, the ranch slowly began to show signs of revival. More strays were located and added to the growing herd. Roy hired 2 local men as permanent hands, and with Joseph and Thomas helping part-time, essential repairs to the buildings and fences were completed. Delilah threw herself into learning every aspect of ranch operation. She mastered riding Western style, helped brand the new calves, and kept meticulous records of expenses and livestock. Each evening, she and Roy would discuss the day's progress and plan for tomorrow, their conversations gradually extending beyond ranch business to more personal matters. She learned that Roy had been orphaned young and raised primarily in various mining camps where his uncle worked. He'd been on his own since 16, working cattle drives, breaking horses, and occasionally serving as a scout for the cavalry. "How did you end up working for my father?" she asked one evening as they shared coffee on the porch. "Pure chance," Roy replied. "My horse came up lame near the creek on your property. Your father found me camping there, offered work instead of running me off for trespassing." "That sounds like him," Delilah smiled. "He always said opportunity often wears a disguise." Roy studied her in the lamplight. "You have his way of looking at things. Finding hope where most see only trouble. Is that so terrible?" "Not terrible. Rare." He seemed about to say more when they heard riders approaching. Roy was on his feet instantly, hand moving to his gun. "Stay here," he ordered, stepping off the porch. 5 riders emerged from the darkness, Wyatt at their lead. "Evening, Irving. Miss Goodwin," he called. "Mr. Hargrove sends his regards." "Kind of him," Roy replied, his stance relaxed but alert. "But it's late for social calls." "Not social," Wyatt said. "Business. Mr. Hargrove's doubling his offer for this land. Cash money." Delilah joined Roy in the yard. "As I've said before, the ranch is not for sale." Wyatt's expression hardened. "Madam, you're not understanding the situation. This ain't a request anymore." "Sounds like you're overstepping, Wyatt," Roy said quietly. "Miss Goodwin has given her answer. Hargrove says to tell you he knows about Tucson," Wyatt continued, ignoring Delilah to focus on Roy. "Says that might change your perspective on things." Roy went completely still, and Delilah noticed his knuckles whiten around his gun belt. "You boys have delivered your message," he finally said. "Now ride out." After a tense moment, Wyatt signaled to his men. 3 days, Irving. Then Mr. Hargrove takes matters into his own hands. As they rode away, Delilah turned to Roy, whose face had gone hard as stone. What did he mean about Tucson? "Nothing that concerns the ranch," he answered shortly, turning toward the bunkhouse. "Lock your doors tonight. Roy," she called after him, the first time she'd used his given name. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." He paused but didn't turn around. "No, Miss Goodwin. I can't." The next morning, Roy was distant, focusing entirely on work and speaking only when necessary. Delilah tried several times to draw him out, but he remained determinedly professional. The easy companionship they developed seemed to have evaporated overnight. By evening, her patience had worn thin. After dinner, she cornered him in the barn where he was checking tack. "This has gone on long enough," she declared. "Whatever Wyatt meant about Tucson clearly troubles you, but shutting me out solves nothing." Roy continued working, not meeting her eyes. "Some things are better left buried. Not when they're being used as weapons against us," she argued. "Hargrove is threatening my ranch and using your past to do it. I deserve to know why." "Your ranch," Roy emphasized. "Your fight. I'm just hired help, remember?" The words stung more than they should have. "Is that truly how you see yourself? After everything we've accomplished together?" Finally, Roy set down the bridle he'd been repairing and faced her. 2 years ago in Tucson, I killed a man," he said bluntly. "Self-defense, but his brother was the territorial judge. I was advised to disappear before a warrant was issued." Delilah absorbed this information. "And Hargrove knows this?" "Apparently. Man like him has connections. So he's threatening to expose you if you continue helping me? Roy nodded. I've stayed in one place too long. Got careless. Then we'll fight him, Delilah said firmly. Together. There is no together, Miss Goodwin, Roy replied, frustration evident in his voice. I told you from the start I'd disappoint you. Now I'm proving it. You're leaving? The possibility hit her like a physical blow. It's the sensible thing. Without me in the picture, maybe Hargrove backs off, makes a legitimate offer. And if he doesn't? Delilah challenged. What then? I just surrender everything we've worked for? We've made good progress. The new hands know what they're doing. You could hire a proper foreman, someone without complications. Delilah stepped closer, her voice dropping. Is it really so easy for you to walk away? From the ranch? From me? Something flashed in Roy's eyes, pain, desire, regret before he masked it. It's because it's not easy that I need to go. I'm no good for you, Delilah. You deserve better than a drifter with a price on his head. Shouldn't that be my choice? She asked softly. They stood so close she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, see the conflict raging in his eyes. For one breathless moment, she thought he might reach for her. Instead, he stepped back. I'm leaving at first light. It's better this way. Delilah watched him walk away, her heart heavy with unspoken words and unfulfilled promises. Dawn arrived with no sign of Roy. Delilah searched the bunkhouse and barn, finding only a brief note. Deal with Hargrove. Don't trust his promises. Our angry tears threatened, but Delilah pushed them aside. She had a ranch to run and a battle to fight. Roy Irving might have abandoned her, but she wouldn't abandon her father's dream. The day passed in a blur of activity as she worked alongside the hands, checking cattle and reinforcing vulnerable sections of fence. By evening, exhaustion had temporarily dulled the ache of Roy's departure, but sleep proved elusive. Near midnight, hoofbeats approaching the house roused her from restless slumber. Grabbing her father's shotgun, she moved cautiously to the porch, expecting to see Hargrove's men. Instead, Roy dismounted from a lathered horse, his face grim. They're coming at dawn, he announced without preamble. Hargrove's men. I overheard them planning in town. They'll claim they're reclaiming stolen cattle. But we haven't stolen anything. Doesn't matter. They'll plant evidence, make it look legitimate. Hargrove's paid off the sheriff. Why did you come back? Delilah asked, the question that mattered most to her. Roy met her eyes directly. Because running isn't the answer. Not this time. They spent the night preparing. Roy gathered the hands, explaining the situation and organizing their defense. Delilah sent Elena to stay with relatives in town and secured the ranch's documents and valuables. If things go badly, Roy told her, ride for the territorial marshal in Prescott. He's honest, at least. Things won't go badly, Delilah insisted. We'll defend what's ours. Roy looked at her with something like wonder. When I first met you, I thought you were in over your head. Now I'd bet on you against any man in the territory. Dawn broke with eerie stillness. Roy positioned the men strategically around the property while Delilah waited in the house, rifle ready. When the riders appeared, 12 of them, more than expected, they approached with casual confidence, clearly not anticipating resistance. Wyatt led them, calling out as they neared the house. Miss Goodwin! We've come about those stolen cattle bearing our brand. My cattle are legitimately mine, Delilah responded from the porch. Circle G branded, as you well know. We have witnesses saying otherwise, Wyatt replied. Step aside, madam. This is men's business now. This is my property, she stated firmly. And you're trespassing. One of Hargrove's men moved to enter the corral. A warning shot from Joseph's position halted him. Next man crosses that line gets more than a warning. Roy's voice rang out as he emerged from behind the barn, rifle raised. Wyatt's expression darkened. Irving. Should have known you'd be fool enough to come back. Some things are worth the risk, Roy replied evenly. What followed was a tense standoff. Hargrove's men, expecting an easy intimidation, found themselves outmaneuvered by Roy's strategic positioning of the ranch hands. When two riders attempted to circle behind the house, they discovered Thomas waiting with deadly aim. "Hargrove isn't worth dying for," Roy called out to the increasingly nervous men. "He sent you here expecting no resistance. Now you're outgunned on unfamiliar ground." Doubt crept into several faces. When one of the younger men turned his horse to leave, Wyatt grabbed for his reins. "Nobody's running," he snarled. "Actually," came a new voice, "I think everyone should stay right where they are." A group of riders appeared from the east, the territorial marshal with 6 deputies, and surprisingly, Walter Jenkins. "Marshal Fletcher," Roy acknowledged with visible relief. "Irving," the lawman nodded. "Mr. Jenkins here rode all night to fetch us. Says there might be trouble brewing." Jenkins dismounted, approaching Delilah. "When I heard Hargrove boasting in the saloon about taking your land today, I thought it prudent to seek proper authorities." The marshal surveyed the scene. "Someone want to explain why there are armed men threatening a legal property owner?" In the aftermath, Wyatt and 2 others were arrested for attempted intimidation and trespassing. The marshal promised to investigate Hargrove's activities thoroughly, particularly his alleged corruption of the local sheriff. As the excitement died down and the ranch hands returned to their duties, Delilah found Roy by the corral, watching the marshal's party disappear into the distance. "You came back," she said simply. "Couldn't seem to stay away," he admitted. "Realized something important while riding out." "And what was that?" "That I've been running so long I forgot what it means to stand and fight for something. For someone." His eyes met hers. "You were right to be proud of proving me wrong." Delilah moved closer. "About disappointing me?" "About everything. I've spent my life believing I wasn't meant to stay anywhere, belong anywhere." His voice roughened. "Then you arrived with your impossible determination and unwavering faith, and suddenly leaving seemed worse than any risk. Does this mean you're staying?" she asked, hardly daring to hope. "If you'll have me," Roy replied. "Not just as a foreman. As a partner. In all ways." Understanding dawned in Delilah's eyes. "Roy Irving, are you proposing to me over a cattle corral?" A slow smile spread across his face. "I suppose I am. Not very romantic, is it?" "On the contrary," Delilah said, stepping into his arms. "I can't imagine anything more perfect." Their lips met as the sun climbed higher in the Arizona sky, sealing a promise that had begun with a challenge in a dusty saloon and blossomed into love against all odds. 1 year later, the Circle G thrived under their joint stewardship. New cattle grazed on recovered pastures, the buildings stood freshly painted and repaired, and Emmett Hargrove had been indicted for fraud and corruption, his empire crumbling. Roy and Delilah stood on the porch of their expanded home, watching the sunset paint the desert in fiery hues. His arm encircled her waist, hand resting protectively over the slight swell of her belly where their first child grew. "Did you ever imagine this?" Delilah asked, leaning into his embrace. "When you said you'd only disappoint me?" Roy chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Never in my wildest dreams. I thought I was doing you a favor, warning you off. And I thought I was simply being stubborn," she replied. "Neither of us realized we were finding exactly what we needed." "A home," Roy murmured. "A purpose. A love worth fighting for." As darkness settled over the land they'd defended together, stars emerged in the vast western sky, witnesses to a promise kept and a love that had transformed 2 solitary souls into a family with roots deep in the challenging but beautiful Arizona soil.